Welcome into the Atlanta Sports Party, your home for the best Atlanta sports talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tanitra Batiste. Alongside me today are Jarvis Davis and Maria Martin. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Now, guys, I would say, we're going to talk about this in the first segment. And then when we go into the deep dive, we're going to talk about a totally different subject. And then when we go into Around the Metro, we're going to talk about something else. That would be fooling everybody because guess what we're going to do? Talk Falcons, head coach search, and more Falcons. So let's get started because we know we have so much to get into. And of course, we will do a little bit of touching base on the Hawks as well. You know, Maria, we like to call it the carousel, the coaching carousel, the merry-go-round, to flowery branch, whatever you want to call it. It's still up and running. And of course, the most recent information that we have received about the Falcons head coaching search is that they just brought in Mike Vrabel for an in-person interview for their head coaching position. I know when I joined you on Sports Extra on Sunday, you were saying, hey, where in the world? Mike Vrabel, why aren't we hearing that name? Now we hear that name is in the mix. What are your thoughts on Mike Vrabel and whether or not he really would be a good fit for the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, look, I obviously think that Mike Vrabel would be a good fit anywhere. I've sung his praises on Sports Extra before. He was successful as a player, a 3-time Super Bowl champion. I'm going to say it, I think I've said it 5 times now, cannot believe we're talking about him looking for a job right now. In my opinion, he should still be in Tennessee, but luckily for another team, they're going to get one of the hottest NFL coaches out there. I mean, he should be someone that people are excited about. What he did in Tennessee and the way he was able to win without a quarterback, granted Mike Vrabel, a defensive guy, obviously, but he had a lot of help. Arthur Smith was there with him when they went on that championship run in the AFC. He was named NFL Coach of the Year in 2021. This guy, his accolades are never ending, and he can prove and has proven that you don't need a quarterback to win. Now, granted, I'm not saying the Falcons don't need a quarterback because they need one, but he's already proven that he can do things with a hodgepodge of a team. He did that in Tennessee, and he was very successful there. He's a player's coach. People love him.
Yeah.
I think as a coach, he has so many things that should make you excited. I don't necessarily believe that the Falcons and him will be a good marriage. And the reason why I say that is because he is really close with Arthur Smith. And when you're leaning on your friends and you're asking them questions, he may be saying, hey, proceed with caution because of what happened to him over the course of 3 years here as the head coach. And remember, pretty much the entire reason that Arthur Smith got a head coaching job here is because of what he did under Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. This guy is successful. He could be successful anywhere, I believe. So I would be excited if it was more serious. I don't know how serious it is. Obviously, they brought him in. He did meet with Arthur Blank and several other people in the front office yesterday, I was told. So, I think it's exciting, but I don't know if he actually ends up in Atlanta.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, Jarvis, that we raise here because, Mike Vrabel has had success both at the player level and at the coach's level. So he knows how to win. And he is someone who could be very valuable somewhere else. I don't know. It's interesting because when you hear the owner talk about it, Amy Adams kind of talked about it being the time they wanted to push forward and they want to kind of win now. And you're thinking, well, he's the reason why you were so successful over these last 6 or so seasons. But on that same token, it may be one of those things like what I shared on Sports Extra as well. Like he could be viable because, he's connected to Arthur Smith, but Arthur Smith was the branch and Mike Vrabel is the coaching tree. So I think that he could be successful, but on that same token, it could raise eyebrows because the question can become how much different or how much better will the Falcons be under Mike Vrabel as it relates to, hey, you did have Arthur Smith that was a part of your coaching staff, and that didn't quite work out for the 3 seasons he was here.
I think one of the things that we have to think about when we're talking about what type of fit he would be, I think we have to look at where he came from.
I think so,
because he's
from
Bill Belichick tree. And Bill Belichick wants control. We heard rumors there were rumors that, he and Rand Carthon didn't get along and he wanted a little more control than what he had as far as from a personnel standpoint. We all know there are not too many coaches that are going to have what Bill Belichick had in New England for 24 years. That's not going to happen anymore. I think we're moving away from that. This whole collaborative thing that Arthur Blank and Richard McKay talked about, they weren't lying. A lot of teams are trying to figure this thing out, right? They're trying to make sure that there are multiple heads in these decisions, because these decisions are going to direct your organization, and you don't want to necessarily have the weight of that on one particular person. And I think that Mike Vrabel hadn't earned that. So I think that when you think about that back part of it, and then we also get a report that Mr. Vrabel want Arthur Smith as his OC wherever if he does get a head coach job. That would be awkward. So yeah, I don't think it's a good fit for those reasons, because I'm in a space now where I definitely want a head coach that has experience.
Sure.
But I'm definitely not in for a guy who wants more than what he deserves.
Yeah,
what he has earned.
Right. I think that would be almost as awkward as if Raheem Morris got hired and said, "Hey, can I bring Dan Quinn back as my DC?"
Yeah,
somewhere in that space of awkwardness, right?
Like that.
Yeah, I don't think if that's one of those pieces of information that we've gotten out there from the rumor mill and that's accurate, yeah, obviously that will not work. Now, another hot prospect, offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, Bobby Slowik, is scheduled for an in-person interview today. Maybe as we speak, he's in Flowery Branch interviewing with Arthur Blank, Rich McKay, Terry Fontenot and company, or however the first round goes. You get different reports based on the candidate. But Jarvis, that said, do you feel like, especially with what Bobby Slowik was able to do this particular year with a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, and the possibility that the Falcons may go back to the draft to pick a quarterback, do you think he'd be a good fit for this Falcons organization?
On the surface, yes, but just kind of like if you really like dig into it, and I just think because when you think about it, it was his first year calling plays, right? You know, he's been the pass game coordinator in San Francisco. He was also, on the staff of the Washington Commanders when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. Absolutely, just go look at that doggone how many people on that staff. Oh my gosh,
know.
like so many head coaches.
Good staff.
so many guys that are either head coaching candidates or head coaching right now, in the NFL. So it's just hard for me to fathom someone who was able to, be an OC and be able to establish a relationship with CJ Stroud in his first year calling plays, and then immediately go and become a head coach and is supposed to have some success in his first year, which is what we just talked about. Arthur Blank is looking for success off the bat, like off the rip. If he's able to do that, God bless him, because it's just, for me, from a football standpoint, I always talk about silos, right? Offensive coordinators get in that little silo and they can just focus in on that thing, and I don't have to worry about talking to no defensive tackle about his issues and his playing time because he been complaining and all that stuff, and I got to be able to talk to the defensive coordinator, figure out why this guy not playing any much, and I need to tell him, hey, he needs to be playing more. So those type of things that you don't have to deal with when you're calling plays, and all you got to do is work on CJ Stroud and Gerard Johnson, the quarterback coach. That's all you got to communicate with. So I think right now, yeah, on the surface, yes. But when you dig into it, I was like, I don't know how he's going to pull it off. I just would be very surprised if he comes in and has success in the first year, coming off of given what he's been able to experience in the past year.
Yeah, he may be one of those that's more of a dark horse candidate, at least in my kind of ranking system, if you will, of sort of that top tier and then sort of that second tier and then sort of that outside chance. I might put him in the outside chance category, but he has this intriguing piece to his background, Maria, because he actually, I think he was out of coaching for a couple seasons and did some analyst work with Pro Football Focus. And I said, he might have a little bit of a different eye, but I still err on the side with Jarvis, where I would like someone who has actually had that head coaching experience. I think in this instance, it may make a difference, or if not, the coordinator experience should be very, very deep to the point where you were in fact, maybe like de facto an assistant head coach, maybe that type of OC, as opposed to maybe someone like Slowik, who's a bit greener than maybe I'd like.
I actually vehemently disagree with you guys for the first time ever. I think that Bobby Slowik should be at the top of the Falcons boards for a lot of different reasons. Now, Jim Harbaugh's off the table, right? Bill Belichick's still on the table. There's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to that particular coaching search. And for the Falcons, to me, I would still lean someone with head coaching experience, something Arthur Blank has never done. He's never hired someone with previous NFL head coaching experience. And Bobby, certainly, he would become the youngest head coach in the NFL by a couple of months because the new Patriots coach, he is very young as well. So he would only be 36 years old. It would be his first NFL head coaching job. But I don't necessarily mean, I don't necessarily think that makes me nervous for a lot of different reasons. Number one, he's a coach's kid. He's been around the game his entire life. His dad is a coach in the NFL. He's been a coach in the CFL. Okay. Then he also has experience on both sides of the ball. He was a wide receiver in college, but when he first got into the NFL, he was on the defensive side of the ball. He has worked on both sides of the ball, so he has experience like previous coordinators have not when they get NHL head coaching experience. And look, for Arthur Blank, all of these guys with long tenured resumes haven't worked for you in the past. This guy is genius. He is very smart when it comes to the pass game coordination, and he is responsible for one of the most outstanding rookie seasons that we have seen from an NFL quarterback. CJ Stroud blew everybody out of the water. They won a playoff game for the first time since 2019. This is a guy who I think could not only be a player's coach, but he could really revolutionize things for you offensively. And he's a lot smarter than I think people give him credit for just because he's 36 years old, which I think society tends to do that when people are younger and they get bigger jobs. And I totally understand that. But I think Bobby Slowik is someone to take very seriously. The Falcons have done that. They were super impressed with him the first time around. I really like Bobby Slowik. And as we're getting deeper into this coaching search, we're now 3 weeks into this thing, there's not a lot of people left on that list that you would really genuinely heavily consider. I think if Bobby's going to get a shot, Atlanta would be a great place. Remember, he's interviewed at 4 different places. There's only 2 left on that list, which would be the Commanders and the Falcons. That's not to say he's going to get a head coaching job, but Bobby Slowik, in my opinion, is someone you really got to take into consideration. What he did with CJ Stroud should give you a lot of confidence. And look, players love him so much. He's young. I mean, Calais Campbell's older than him, but I think he would listen to a guy like Bobby, in my opinion.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because you never know. I think the league is a copycat league, so that's probably what puts him in the upper tier for Arthur Blank because everyone wants their version of Sean McVay, right? Yep. And so it'll be, oh gosh, is he the next? Is he the next? And everyone is very analytics happy. And well, if you were doing analytics work, then you obviously fit in that space. But I got to tell you, if I'm going to give somebody a chance and if I'm going to take a shot on somebody to get a head coaching opportunity, I'm taking a chance on Raheem Morris. That's going to be the guy that I'm going to give a chance to if I'm going to give a chance to anybody, because if you want to talk about both sides of the ball, you're also talking about a Super Bowl champion head coach who's coached on both sides of the ball. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But like I said, there's so many more candidates that are still in the mix for the Falcons that we're going to talk about it more on the other side. This episode of our Atlanta Sports Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, guys, you see how animated we are about this Falcons head coach search, because this time next season, we hope we are still talking to you guys about the Falcons because it's the postseason, but we know we'll be talking to you guys this time next season about FanDuel. That's because it's still time for you to get in on the action, even in the postseason with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And I know we are getting ever so close to not just Valentine's Day, but also Super Bowl Sunday. And you might want a few extra dollars so you can have a great Super Bowl party or maybe give away a nice gift for Valentine's Day. Who knows? Now, this app is user-friendly. It's so easy, and there's so many different ways that you can bet, like live same-game parlays, finding bets in the new Explore tab, making a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. So again, user-friendly, live same-game parlays, finding bets in the new Explore tab, and making a parlay in the Parlay Hub. Can't ask for much more than what FanDuel offers. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON, because FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. All right, guys, welcome back into the Atlanta Sports Party. Of course, you guys know that we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are your team each and every day talking about your favorite football team here locally, the Atlanta Falcons. And we know that you guys want Arthur Blank and company to get it right just as much as we do. Now, it's interesting, Jarvis, because if you take it back 7 days, 10 days, maybe even longer. I think we're now in the 16th day officially of the search. But
feel like 3 months.
I know.
We're in Q2 now.
Right. I think when it finally happens, we're all going to be like a collective sigh, like, gosh, we're done here. But in the beginning, Falcons, so hot and heavy. It was Bill Belichick. All you heard was Belichick, Belichick. He's going to be the next coach. But interestingly enough, it seems like for a few different reasons that lately in the last few, I'd say 24, 48 hours, they've kind of cooled on him for different reason. It depends on whose report you believe. I think the most recent report that we got even this morning was a big part of that was, hey, maybe we are rethinking this whole who's going to have power and what is the structure going to be like and where does an Arthur Blank, a Rich McKay, a Terry Fontenot, and potentially a Bill Belichick fit, right? That's a huge part of it. And whether or not they can all agree on who has responsibilities for what. But do you feel like he still has a chance? Do you feel like no matter what those rumors say in your gut, he's the front runner still?
I wouldn't say front runner. I would say I wouldn't totally rule out Bill Belichick being the head coach of this team because at the end of the day, like you got to look at the resume. I know I wasn't a fan of him coming in because of just that whole superpower thing. I don't think he and Rich McKay can kind of like kiss and make up and make that work. You know what I mean? But for overall, I feel like Bill Belichick has coached his best. Like that's in his past. I feel like that is in his past. Like I feel that we will get a lesser Bill Belichick. And I think that'll be closer to what we've seen these past 3 or 4 years versus what we saw, in the 2000s and then, in those 6 Super Bowls. I don't think we'll see that. I don't think it's going to be even close to that. So am I okay with them getting a lesser version of Bill Belichick? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I think that, he still has to be in the running, given the situation, right? Because Jim Harbaugh, we heard they was on him and he was supposed to have a meeting and he wasn't supposed to have a meeting and all that stuff. And then the Chargers hired him as a head coach. So that's one of the big time guys. We talked about Mike Vrabel and saw him coming in for an in-person interview, and he wants to have Arthur Smith as OC. Can we rule him? We can rule him out for that, right?
Yeah, that alone is happy out.
So and then we have Bill Belichick, who they say he cooled on, and then executive team. We don't know who's gonna have the power. Can you have the juice? Rich McKay going on over here and go back to try to build another stadium somewhere, and I'm gonna handle all these football decisions. Is McKay okay with that? Is Arthur Blank okay putting his right hand man in that type of position? So I think it's just too many things going on as far as the executive team and what's Terry Fontenot's role if Bill Belichick comes in. So how would that look if you essentially let him go or give him a lesser position and then he just goes away, after you said that, hey, he's going to have input on who's hired for this team. So it's just too many factors that they will have to explain, and Falcons are really big on public perception. Yeah. So I think that for those reasons, more than likely he's not going to be the coach, but I definitely don't think they're going to rule him out.
Well, if Terry Fontenot goes away, that means somebody else's defense will go from the bottom to middling to the top of the league, I feel like, because if he gets his hand on scouting and he gets his hand on being able to put together somebody else's team, good luck, Falcons. You'll probably be on some, I don't want to say a revenge tour, but some semblance thereof. But who came to mind, Maria? I think one of the questions becomes as well, and I'm taking you guys old school with it, but can Bill Belichick truly in some way, shape, or form reinvent himself? The reason I say it that way is because I think about Dick Vermeil and his first run as the Eagles coach, and he was a very well-respected coach back in his early time, but he was a different, hard-nosed, hardcore Dick Vermeil. They got the softer, easier Dick Vermeil when they got him with the St. Louis Rams. And sometimes, and granted, he had some time off and he had some time to think about exactly who he was and whether or not that approach was going to work with the newer school player. I don't know necessarily that there's any gap for Bill Belichick to have an opportunity to kind of reset himself, but I think that's if you think about it, Maria, that's kind of the question in everybody's mind as well. In addition to the whole power structure and who's going to have the juice, as Jarvis said, I think the other piece is, can there be a reset to really deal with today's modern athlete, especially with a team as young as the Falcons?
I think a team like the Falcons would force him into that, whether he wanted to or not, in some way, shape, or form. I don't think you're going to totally take Bill Belichick and what he's been for the last almost 3 decades and turn him into a totally different coach. I don't know that would happen anywhere, but I think if there's any team, something as young as the Falcons, this is a very cultural city. This is very different than living in New England. And there are a lot of things that you need to understand about living and working in this city. And it's such a phenomenal city and could thrive with a good NFL team if it's done correctly. And I think Bill Belichick would understand that. I think that's a lot of the hesitation with someone like Bill. He's super old school, as you mentioned, which is tough with a team like the Falcons. That's not to say it couldn't work. That's not to say he couldn't be successful here. I mean, look, he's what, 2 or 3 seasons away from breaking Don Shula's record, as we've talked about before. He's obviously incredibly hungry to do that. I think it's possible that Bill could do that, but that could be a little bit of the pushback. You've seen those reports of there are people that would butt heads with Belichick. That's obvious, right? I mean, he has done things his way in New England for longer than a lot of people have been alive in this market. And it's hard to take that and flip that. I don't care what people say. I don't care what he says to the Falcons. That is really hard to reverse. And it worked in New England for a really long time. But also remember when Tom Brady became a free agent, and not a lot of people were uberly excited about getting Tom Brady. And then he went to Tampa and everyone was like, wait a second, we could have had that. What if that happens with Bill Belichick, right? A lot of people have the hesitation where he's on the end of his career. He hasn't won in New England in the last couple of years. Granted, his roster was not as good as it had been when Tom Brady was there, obviously. And then you have the Tom Brady factor that's very different. But this is a better roster here. You put in a good quarterback. I think a veteran would come with Bill Belichick. I don't necessarily think he's interested in developing a young quarterback. We saw how that worked out with Mac Jones. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I think it could work here. It's just, how does the power structure look? That will be an eye-opening experience for the Falcons. And you know what? Maybe they need that, because what hasn't worked in the past needs some reevaluation. And Bill Belichick will certainly make you take a really good hard look in the mirror. And what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How do we fix it? So, I don't think he's totally out of the race. I think there are other coaches that obviously they are looking at very closely. I also don't expect to hear a coach by this week. I think it's going to go into next week. Unfortunately, we're just, dragging this out, but it's good because you want them to do their homework and you want them to get it right. And there's some good coaches on this list, and it tells you a lot that Bill Belichick has only been interested in this team. He has had interest from other teams that he did not reciprocate. So why the Falcons? Why want to be here? How does it look from upper management? That's the holdup, in my opinion. Everything else, I think he could reinvent the wheel. It's just not as stark of a difference as I think people would want to see, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm looking, Jarvis, at the 2 things as well. And sometimes they butt heads against one another, right? The number of head coach openings that are left against the number of quality or top tier candidates that are in the Falcons pool, and how those things can kind of juxtapose themselves. I think we can all agree that Jim Harbaugh was kind of your 1A and your 1B to Bill Belichick in terms of interest and maybe even fit. He might even have been a better fit than Bill Belichick. But the minute that it was announced that he was the head coach for the Chargers, it's like, okay, kind of the 1A, 1B guy goes out the door. So Jarvis, when you kind of look at the pool of candidates left, but on the same token, that same pool that's being considered for the last couple of jobs left available in this league, how do you think that kind of plays out in terms of, I don't want to say forcing the hand, but maybe adjusting the hand of the Falcons and what they can do?
I don't think it should change anything, because if you're going through the process, if it's wide open as you said it was, as the report said, you should continue to do your due diligence and stay the course, because at the end of the day, you want to get your person, because they stuck around for Dan Quinn and for however people feel about Dan. The man went to a doggone Super Bowl, and we all know what the score was before all that other stuff happened, So I think that if we let them play out this process, and I feel like, I want to believe that they're going to get a good candidate. And then the more and more the time it takes, I feel like the more they're going to be able to make the right decision. So the fact that guys like Jim Harbaugh have been hired and all that stuff, and that was one of their candidates that they were really looking at hard, from what the reports say, that's okay. Like, you can find, there's more than one good candidate. Let me say that much. I feel like there's more than one guy that can have success with the Falcons, just the way their roster is built and how, especially on defense, because the defense is ready to win right now, in my humble opinion. You get you one more edge rusher, and I think it's about to go down on that side of the football. So, and then of course you get the quarterback, and there's some veteran options, and then there are some young veteran options, and then of course you can go young. So I'm in the business of this team making a decision that they're going to have long-term success. I ain't with the quick fix. I don't care about that. I want this Falcon organization to make a decision that's going to be a long-term success asset type situation and decision.
And I'm okay with, like, I wouldn't call it a quick fix, but I'm okay with the win now. If we go the win now route, when we look back at what it brought to the table for the Rams, a Super Bowl, what it brought to the table for the Broncos, a Super Bowl.
Blank them picks.
Super Bowls, right. 2 Super Bowls and 3, right? So,
let's need you say blank them picks.
Exactly. That's what I believe. So if it turns out to be a situation like that, and just real quick before we wrap up, going back to Bill Belichick, in the back of his mind, whether he wants to ever admit it or not, he's eyeing that winning his coach crown. And sometimes you have to think, you have to hopefully have the people around you that tell you, hey man, you might have to modify how you approach things. Look at the bigger picture here, because if you can get with the Falcons and they're almost a win now situation, this is still considered the most attractive job still left out there. So we shall see. The saga will continue.
Can I say one thing really quick? And how great would it be if you're Bill Belichick and you're thinking, no one believes in me right now. No one thinks that I can win anymore. I'm old. I'm this. I'm that. And you go to a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl and you give them one. That's insane.
And,
right?
he can be like, hey, I am.
That'll be ridiculous.
This isn't sacrilegious, but it could certainly be like, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And in his case, the Lord taketh away from the Falcons and the Lord giveth it back.
That's motivation, if you ask me. That is motivation. If I'm his age and this is my narrative, I'm like, let me prove some people wrong.
Exactly. Let me give you back what
I wouldn't mind being wrong in that situation, Maria.
Yeah, that's right. That would be me neither. Nobody would mind, right? Everyone goes 28-3. I don't even know what that means. We have a Super Bowl.
What's that?
You got it.
Super Bowl. I say Super Bowl.
Right.
We'll check it on the other side. And I gotta say, it's almost difficult for me to even switch gears, because this has been so fun talking about this. But hey, you guys know, whether it's on the Sports Party or whether you check out Maria on Sports Extra, and we stop by there sometimes too, or 11 Alive Sports. Anyone in this Locked On Sports Techna family has got you covered when it comes to Falcons breaking news on the head coach position. But hey, we got another team in this town who is kind of middling, trying to get out of their own way. And Maria, for whatever reason, it seems like they simply can't do it. It's almost like, oh, tink, tink. Like, the Hawks just cannot make it happen for themselves, for the love of God, no matter what. And the reason I bring it up that way, poor little thing. The reason I bring it up that way is because I feel like here we are at another trade deadline, Maria, and we're having this conversation again, whether it's theoretical or not, about how the Hawks can get better. I got 2 questions for you, Maria. Number one, we're about 2 weeks away from the trade deadline in the NBA. So number one, can they get better before or at the trade line? And number 2, why are we talking about this again? I thought if you get a different coach, everything would be okay.
I love
so petty. So pettiness is oozing.
But she's right, though, because that's what everyone said. And look, I'm just about as big of a Quinn Snyder fan as I think you guys are. As well.
Yes, of course.
And I just, to the people that said that it was going to be the coach and that's it, give Quinn Snyder some time. This team needs a lot of things. And I think that's being proven each and every time they play, is that it's not one quick fix. It's not they're a big blockbuster move away. I think that they have some restructuring to do. And that starts with Quinn Snyder. He's getting in. He's still getting adjusted to his way of defensive thinking, his way of doing things. And you see tiny little steps of growth, as we've talked about a little bit. One night they're doing better defensively, but then something else falls off. They can't have it all, and there's something wrong. And it's hard to pinpoint what it is. It goes back to the communication that Quinn has talked about so often, is that the guys are not communicating to the level that they want. But I also don't think it's just that. Yeah. I think that there are a couple different pieces that they need to move around. Perhaps that means getting rid of DeJounte Murray, because clearly that relationship, as we've talked about before, is not flourishing like we thought it would. DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, maybe getting a new taste of scenery from somebody else, because Trae's still the guy that runs point on this team, and some things are not working with Trae right now. Yeah. And I don't know what the exact fix is, because I feel like there's more than one.
Yes, I would agree with you. And Jarvis, I think that when you ask that question of whether or not they can get better at or ahead of the trade deadline, the answer is almost unequivocally no, because the only way you can get better is, like Maria said, you would have to move a really good part. I mean, DeJounte Murray has been balling out of late, and the rationale behind it, I mean, we could go on and on about what that could be, but the bottom line is DJ's doing his thing. But at the end of the day, if there are multiple pieces and multiple reasons why you are where you are, what are we talking, 16 and 25 here? I mean, the reason you are where you are, quite honestly, is more than that, Jarvis. I think we do take a look, and not Maria necessarily, I'm talking about we as a collective. I think that we take a look at that backcourt and we say, oh God, the math just never mathed like it was supposed to. But low key, I think that front court might be way more of a problem than people want to account for, just because particularly at small forward, you're just not getting what you need in terms of wing defense. And let's just face it, and we love CC, we love Clint Capella, but the Clint Capella who came to this team a couple seasons ago is just not the Clint Capella we're seeing now. And where bigs are going in the league versus where the bigs are for the Hawks, just not the same.
Yeah, when you think about the situation with the Hawks, you mentioned the front court, that's an issue, that's a problem. You got DeAndre Hunter, who just got paid, and has he played this year?
Has he played? I know, right?
I can't even remember last time DeAndre Hunter played a game. Like, where is he? And Clint has been playing, and sometimes I'm looking at some of the games, I'm just like, where's Clint Capella? Where's the help? You hired to be the help. You ain't helping. So it's just like I said, it's too many issues for them to get better at the trade deadline. I just don't think that's possible. I think they need to do a reassessment of this roster. More than likely, that's going to need to happen in the offseason.
But we'll see. We'll check into it, and we hope for the best, because like your shirt says, positivity. Anyway, we appreciate you guys stopping by the Atlanta Sports Party. Of course, this Locked On Sports Atlanta Party has a YouTube channel as well, and it's now streaming 24/7. So if you want to see these faces live 24/7, make sure you check us out. Also, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're available and free for the free feed wherever you download your podcast. Thanks again, guys, for stopping by, and don't forget to check us out on the Locked On Hawks postcast on Friday night.